Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, April 12th. I'm your host, Tony Gerdeman, here along with Kevin Noon. The Texas game is in 127 days. The Michigan game in 218 days. Planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle. Columbus's favorite food truck is serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. As you know, Tom's out of town. We're trying to hold it down for him. We're, I think, doing a fantastic job. Don't ask Tom. But the strange thing about this show, as you guys know, the draft is tonight, so we can't really preview it because it's the show is tomorrow morning. So what we'd preview would already be done. But we're still going to talk a little bit about it, and then also look ahead to possible first rounders next year, because the NFL first round of the NFL draft is tonight. And Kevin, there's a wide range. I've seen 5 guys mocked over the course of all of these mock drafts, of 5 Buckeyes that could end up in the first round. And just for clarity's sake, I'm a Bears fan. Kevin is a Cowboys fan. Kevin, who do you want the Cowboys taking tonight at 12?
Oh my God, they need so much. Can they take a new owner? If they could replace Jerry Jones, I would be thrilled. I've spent so much time focusing on Buckeyes in the
Mhm.
draft and everything else that I've not had in the Venn diagram. I've not had the circles link or anything else.
Well,
I know,
which Buckeye would you like at 12? If you had to take one at 12.
honestly, I think I've seen Ted McMillan from Arizona mocked there. How about we just take him out and we put Emeka Ibuka in there? I think that, he with Emeka Ibuka, he's an inside outside guy, probably more inside, some outside. I think they need another outside guy to go with CeeDee Lamb. So I don't know if
Mhm.
Ibuka necessarily fits their needs, but just based on everything else, I mean, yeah, they always need offensive linemen. Yes, I mean, Josh Simmons would be a great pick, but somebody coming off of a pretty catastrophic injury. I mean, we do not have the benefit of seeing the medicals and
Mhm.
knowing what happened there. Um, I could think of a lot of players that I'd like to end up in Dallas, but yeah, at 12, you got to get it right. You got to get it right, and unfortunately, I'm always very skeptical of what Jerry and Steven and the rest of the Jones family decides to do.
Me being a Bears fan, the Bears are at 10. I wouldn't mind Ashton Genty from Boise State, but it sounds like he might not get past Jacksonville at 5. And this group, this running back group is so deep that I don't think you need to trade up to go get a running back. I think there'll be one for you there. And the Bears have like 2 second-round picks, so they can get somebody there. What I don't want is a Texas player. I don't want an offensive lineman. I don't want Matthew Golden, the wide receiver. I'm not. I just I don't think they need an offensive lineman per se. And again, these are just this is me and Kevin talking. You guys, sorry for the aside there, but
Well, let me
with
throw in here.
yeah,
I was just watching Daniel Jeremiah's final mock on NFL Network as we're recording this, and he had Tyler Warren going to Chicago.
and I've also seen Colston Loveland in some of that discussion as well, where I do I want either of those guys at 10? Maybe not. I think Tyler Warren gets a little bit of boost because he did all of the stuff that nobody's going to ask him to do in the NFL. Nobody's going to ask him to carry the ball. You know what? You don't have to play quarterback here. Things that he had to do at Penn State. We don't need you to be the Wildcat. But how many? If I set the over under, because you put a post on the board asking. Well, this is for later on, but somebody else put a post on the board asking for an over under. Set the over under at 2.5 for Ohio State first round picks this year. And just, I'll throw the names out there. The names that I've seen that have been in various mocks, and we all start looking at mock drafts around January, and then it just continues for like 4 months. But you've got Emeka Ibuka, you've got Josh Simmons, you've got Travion Henderson, Donovan Jackson, and Tyleik Williams are the 5 names that I've seen. Have you seen anybody else? I haven't seen like Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau haven't necessarily been mentioned as much as they were early on. Quinshon Judkins, I haven't seen him mentioned. These are all more second, third round guys. But of those 5 and anybody else, if we set the over under at 2.5, where are you at?
Taking the under. I'm taking the under just based on, you say you start looking at mocks in January. I'm already looking at 2026 mocks.
Mhm.
I'm one of those sickos when it comes to the draft. I love the draft, and I just and let's not forget that there was a mock draft out there a year in advance of its draft that had 7 banks going number one overall in the draft. So, don't put a lot of weight in the mocks that you're seeing here in 26, but 2.5 is the right number for trying to create the separation there, because I've seen mocks with 2 Buckeyes, I've seen mocks with 1 Buckeye, I've seen mocks with 3. I haven't really seen any with 4 at this point. So, and the vast majority have been 2 to 3. Mm, I think Josh Simmons is pretty safe as being a first rounder. I think Emeka Buka is pretty safe as being a first rounder. I think then it just kind of comes down to what teams need. It's funny because I've seen Trevion Henderson. I just saw one this morning from Football Guys that had Trevion Henderson in the first round. A lot of mocks I've seen have Quinshawn Judkins going ahead of Trevion Henderson. So there's just no real consensus out there. With Donovan Jackson, I think there's just some questions on, oh, well, he can play 4 positions, but what is his best position and where does his value come in? With Tyleik Williams, when Tyleik is on, Tyleik is fantastic, but are you going to be able to get enough Tyleik to equate spending a first round pick on him? I would not be surprised if there were 3, but if I'm having to put my money, if I'm having to put a couple of black chips on something like that, I'm taking the under.
That's kind of where I am. That's what I posted on our message board, Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, because I think Josh Simmons, as you said, is the sure guy. Emeka could be 20, he could be 40, and then the same with Trevion Henderson. I saw just today the Broncos like him, but the Broncos may try to trade up and get Ashton Genty, and if they don't do that, then maybe Trevion's there. But I've seen so many mock drafts with Emeka Ibuka connected to the Broncos at 20. So I feel like I'm saying under, but I'm not going to be shocked if those 3 make it. But again, this is a really deep running back draft, so it just depends on what you want and what you need. It's a deep defensive tackle draft in terms of guys that could be late first into the 3rd round. We've seen guys fall for forever almost in watching these things, and you never know why. So I'm with you on the under. We'll see if people are laughing at us right now, if they're listening to us or watching this in the morning after the first round has taken place. Again, we are recording this at 12:45 on Thursday. Get off our back. Now, knowing how impossible or difficult it is to nail down the first rounders the day of the draft, Kevin, I want us to nail down the first rounders for the Buckeyes in 2026. And it's not a big list of names, because even the draft eligible guys on this year's team,
I have a lot of names. I have 9.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just saying, like, the guys who are draft eligible, you got to include like Lincoln Keatles, Brandon Innes, Bryson Rogers, and we're not really getting into any of the offensive linemen. At least I'm not. But you've got 9. I have highlighted, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm trying to be conservative in this. But also, when I think you posted on our board, taking Caleb Downs out of the mix, like who's going to be the highest drafted Buckeye in 2026. And one guy I don't even have highlighted here, I posted that, I could maybe throw some money down on Kenyatta Jackson just to see, just as a flyer, like a Heisman futures bet.
Well, I have 9 on my list, one of them being Caleb Downs. And I was like, all right, that's enough. You just have to stop right there. Because the reality is we don't know what kind of season some of these guys are going to have. Where do you put Bo Atkinson, who they just picked up in the portal? I mean, the thing is, after I posted that Caleb Downs thread, is safety is all well and good, but it's not the Cadillac position of quarterback, cornerback, or left tackle. So there really is a chance that somebody could move up, ahead of them. I mean, Ohio State goes out and picks up a transfer offensive lineman, and Ethan. I have not gotten to the Tui Moloau point of his career where I can just let it roll right off. Odianwa,
Perfect.
I mean, he Cadillac position right there. I mean, he could sit there and be that guy. I mean, but Carnell Tate, Sonny Styles. I mean, those are the guys on my upper list, and then on the lower list, What happens if IGB has a big year? What happens if Jermaine Matthews has a big year? I have Bo Atkinson. I have Kenyatta Jackson. Here's another one. What if Max Clare goes out and has the best tight end year of anybody out there? I mean, there's somebody else. So, yeah, don't, freezing cold takes, don't take this. Kevin Noon predicting 9 first-round Buckeyes, but there is a list. We talk about a team. It's like, oh my God, who's going to play for him? How are they going to field 11 aside? And I have 9 names listed here as potential first-rounders, and I forced myself to stop because I'm like, all right, now we're just kind of getting silly.
Right now, we're just listing names. I'll throw one out there. And you mentioned IGB, and I can hear people rolling their eyes now. It's like he's got the length and the size that the NFL loves, and if he gets rid of the grabbiness, we'll see. Like it felt for a while, like while Kerry Combs was here for a while, it's just like, well, if you started Ohio State at corner, you're probably a first-round pick. And that's not been the case for a while. And in fact, even if you are a first-round pick, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get a second contract. So the assumptions of just, hey, you're first rounder. Denzel Burke was a 4-year starter. He's not going to be a first-round pick. So we'll see if IGB can start that back up, or Jermaine Matthews. Jermaine Matthews doesn't have the size that Igbinosun does, but I think he's a possibility. But again, you've also, if you're going to be in the late first round, or if that's your ceiling is a late first round, but you could also end up being a third rounder, that's one of those things that brings you back for a senior year where you can definitely be a top 15 or top 20 pick. So some of these guys are going to fall into that. But in terms of the highest drafted player, and I had talked with an NFL scout that I know after Downs' freshman year, during his transfer to Ohio State, said if he came out right now, he'd be a top 10 pick. But this is a guy who loves safeties. So take that with a grain of salt. But everybody loves Caleb Downs. I feel like he's the premier name, but is the premier name always he's not necessarily the first guy picked because it's not a premier position, as you said. I don't have Ethan Onianwa as one of my bolded. I've got like 15 or 16 names, but I've only got a few bolded because we don't know yet. But if he turns into Josh Simmons, and there's a possibility there. But I think we could go with Caleb Downs as perhaps the highest drafted, but anybody else in there, like what about a Sonny Styles, where he's got all of the athletic, markers that you need, and he'll show out at pro day and at the combine, and this will be his second year as a linebacker to move up. But again, linebacker is not a position that necessarily goes high either.
And that's the issue. I mean, and what is he in a 3-4 scheme? I mean, you got to sit there and, I mean, there's some players that work better in a 4-3 and don't really work as well in a 3-4, and vice versa, and everything else. So, that's why I have Carnell Tate in my upper list, just because, he is a receiver and we know what he is. And there's not a lot of, determinations of, how does he fit in this scheme and how does he fit in that scheme? Go out there and run your routes and get open and score touchdowns at that point. But, Sonny Styles, very intriguing. I could see a case of him having a little bit of like a Baron Browning type of situation. I'm not saying that you're going to slide Sonny Styles all the way down to the line of scrimmage, though I have made that argument before at some points. Is there going to be a point of where he does get to the league, or when he gets to the league, and they unlock the potential, and it's like, what the hell were they doing with him at Ohio State?
Yeah, is he a 3-4 outside linebacker, or something like that it does allow for more pass rushing? And how do teams view him? Because just as an inside linebacker, you're looking at like the top guys in this draft are borderline first rounders, second round kind of guys. And that's just kind of the nature of the business, inside linebacker. Now, if you're, like all of these Alabama outside linebackers that always go in the top 10, like Will Anderson and Dallas Turner or whatever, like they're the same size as Sonny Styles, but they don't play the same position. Now, if that's something that somebody would view Sonny Styles as that, but it's hard to draft him that high when you haven't seen it. So that would be kind of a projection. With Carnell Tate, yeah. He's the one that I have bolded on offense. He's like the only one because I still want to see what Ethan Onianwa does. I I don't want to get into the assumption like we did with what we used to do with corners. Well, of course he's a first rounder. He started. But with the receivers, that's kind of, if you start for a couple of years and you don't transfer to Penn State, then you probably can end up a first rounder at Ohio State. And yet, this is, again, Carnell Tate's going to be a junior, so he doesn't have to go. But just kind of feels like he's gonna. Like he's gonna put up 1,000 yards. That's the plan. And the reason Emeka Egbuka didn't leave after his junior year was because of injury. So as long as Carnell Tate stays healthy, does what he's expected to do, I would expect him to be a first rounder next year.
Yeah, and once if you're a first rounder, oh well, you come back and be a top 10 player or whatever. I mean, yes, I understand we're in a very different world now with NIL, and you're going to be taken care of. You're going to probably make a couple $1 million or whatever through NIL and everything else, or you could just start earning and start working your way toward that second contract. And that second contract, two of us poor guys here talking about this, but that second contract's where you really get generational wealth.
Mhm.
I mean, as opposed to the rookie contract, where as a first rounder, there's the 5th-year option, team option. You're doing okay on that contract, but that second contract is, is the brakes truck.
Yeah, like your first contract, you're going to burn through that 25 million in a year tops. Like, so to be able to get that, the second contract where you can make 60 to, by the time these guys are making their second contract, the rates for receivers are probably going to be like $45 million a year for the top guys, which is good business if you can find
And it
it.
might be $35 for a dozen eggs.
That's true. Anybody, because like Arvell Reese is a guy who's a
Right.
junior this year who could, but again, he plays inside linebacker. So what is that? I think I mentioned Caden McDonald. If he blows up, this is a defensive tackle. So that's always going to be a prime position. This is going to be his big opportunity. He's going to be playing a ton. And so if he lights it up, which Ohio State wants to see him play really well, but if he plays too well, then the Buckeyes are going to have a problem in 2026.
Oh, I know. That's always the thing. And that's something that we talk about maybe more on the basketball side of things.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of led to the downfall of Chris Holtmann, was that he would bring in somebody who would just play too well and then leave, and he never was able to stack teams the right way. But this isn't a basketball show, so I won't get too deep into that one. But yeah, Caden McDonald comes out and has just a tremendous year, and people want to sit there and well, they're all defensive linemen. Well, as a one tech, you're putting up some different types of numbers than you would be as an edge. So let's not say, well, he has to have X amount of sacks or whatever. That's just not exactly the MO. That's not what is what he's set up to do. But yeah, if he has a big year, then Ohio State is once again searching for D tackles, and especially if Ohio State ever wants to consider going to a 3-4, you've got to have that big nose tackle. And we're 5-7 years away from just saying Ohio State's struggling to find D tackles. Now, nose tackles, now you're looking for like a golden needle in a haystack. It's that much more difficult.
Defensive ends. So there are 5 defensive ends next year. Are all going to be this year. Are all going to be in their 4th year. Caden Curry and CJ Hicks are the only true seniors. Everybody else has a redshirt year. So all 5 of those guys are going to be draft eligible. We'll see who plays well enough. If I set the over-under at 2.5 first rounders again for next year, considering Caleb Downs is a likely, that's an easy one. That's the free space. But if I set it at 2.5 again next year, are you going over or under?
The smart money would be saying the under. There are 32 first round picks, period. It doesn't change. There's no floating or anything like that. It's not like the number of 5 stars out there. Oh, well, we could have 36 5 stars this year and 38 the next year. It's 32. It is a finite number. Picking the over means that you're saying that essentially you're closing in on 10% of the field is going to be Ohio State players. Looking at the list and everything else, and if this team is as good as I think it's going to be, and again, team success and player success are not always necessarily hand in hand, give me the over. Give me the over. I think that is a foolish decision, but we make foolish decisions all the time on Tom's show because they can't pin it back on us.
Right. And nobody's going to remember this in a year unless we bring it back up repeatedly over and over again. But the thing is, like, if we're just assuming and if we are understanding that Caleb Downs is a first rounder and Carnell Tate is a first rounder, to think that nobody else is going to step up or jump up and make it is maybe that's kind of underselling or underestimating what should be a pretty darn good team. So there you go. Under this year, over next year, let Kevin know either way, whether he's right or wrong, and that you appreciate his input.
At tom.or.com, at Netscape.net.
Alta Vista. Anyway, that'll do it. If you want to go ahead and hit the thumbs up on the YouTube, if you're watching that, we would appreciate that. And of course, hit the like and as I just said, and subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. The draft starts tonight, I assume 7:30 or 8. You guys know. And then we'll go on for the next 3 days. And we'll be talking about it pretty much the entire time at BuckeyeHuddle.com and the message board there, presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So find us. We'd love to see you there, and we'll talk to you guys later.